Hey everyone, welcome to the March 21st, 2025. It's March Madness episode of On Iowa Politics. This week on the podcast, remembering a legislative legend, a drama-rich county party leadership election, and Minnesota's governor returns to Iowa. Hey everyone, I'm Erin Murphy, the Des Moines bureau chief for the Gazette in Cedar Rapids. And this week, in honor of the start of March Madness, I want to hear everyone's national champion pick. And folks, if you didn't pick one, make it up on the spot right now for us. Tom Barton couldn't be with us. You'll find out on next week's podcast why. I'm assuming Tom picked Iowa State to win it all, so I think I can speak for him there. Lead Des Moines bureau chief Maya Marchel Hoff is with us. Hey, Maya, who's your NCAA tournament winner?
Hey, Erin. I'm not just saying this to butter you up or jinx anything, but I'm going to go with Wisconsin. I'm knocking on wood right now. So it's my
on
pick.
Wisconsin. I love it. We're off to a great start. Sarah Watson of the Quad City Times is here. Sarah, who's your pick?
Iowa State. And then Iowa for the women. So I don't have as much faith.
So you are clearly not one of those Iowa Hawkeye fans that has to always hate the Cyclones, I take it.
No. I had family that went to Iowa State. So we're house divided.
Okay, very cool. Jared McNett of the Sioux City Journal is here. Hello, Jared. Who you got?
I have an anti-pick, Erin, and that's not Drake. I'd be more okay with Duke winning at this point than I would be the Drake Bulldogs. Don't have any problem with anybody that went there. One of our coworkers went to Drake, but the university can rot in hell as far as I'm concerned after what happened yesterday.
What did I miss? What happened yesterday? Oh, are you a Mizzou fan?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. That took me a second. I was like, why? What happened between Jared and Drake?
Down with the Bulldogs, Aaron.
So I was gonna wait and say mine, but so now I'm gonna add it. Now I was gonna throw everybody in curveball and say you would have think I would have said on Wisconsin here, but I was gonna say Drake. No, I'm afraid to.
As you should be, Erin.
All right. And Gazette columnist Todd Dorman is with us. Todd, who you got?
As a 1993 graduate of Drake University, you can go ahead and etch it on the trophy. You can cue One Shining Moment. It's theirs. They're taking it.
Oh, that's great.
Todd, that was why I hedged and said I don't have any problems with anyone who went to Drake, just the school.
I thought that was maybe from my daughter, who's a freshman at Drake this year. Oh, man, that's fantastic. I love it. I'm obviously rooting for my Badgers, but I've been on the Drake bandwagon all of 1 week since Griff, the Bulldogs, slept through the NCAA tournament selection show. That was fantastic. Ever since then, I'm all on Drake. If they meet my Badgers, I'm rooting for Griff. That's probably
they wouldn't even let him into the arena though. They've got this
Isn't that a great story?
Stupid mascot rule. This little bulldog can't go in there and just lay in a chair and sleep.
My wife and daughter are fired up about that. We're talking about this real quick because this is great stuff for anybody who hasn't been following this. The Drake wanted to take Griff, their live bulldog mascot, to the games, which they have in various other road trips. And the NCAA has like this hard and fast rule of and apparently, so as this story unfolded, the rule is the facility has to be able to accommodate any potential mascot who could be a school would ask to come to the facility. And so Griff, the bulldog, who sits in a chair and sleeps through the NCAA tournament selection show, can't come to the arena this week because what if Texas wanted to bring its giant steer? And because that's the rule in place, Griff couldn't go. So it's
hell, let them bring their steer. I don't care. I mean, it's Wichita, Kansas. They probably have livestock auctions at that place.
Oh man, it's great stuff. And Jared, knowing the motivation, I am sorry for your Tigers. I know the feeling. All right, let's get on with this. We're going to start with Todd this week because Todd recently wrote a column about the passing of Jack Kibbie, a former Iowa legislator who also at one point served as Iowa Senate president. Kibbie, who was from Emmitsburg, and I believe he literally lived his whole life in Emmitsburg. Someone can fact check me on that if I'm wrong. But anyways, he had a long legislative career and has been remembered in particular for starting Iowa's community college system. Todd's column has that, but also so much more. And Todd's column uses an interview that he had with Kibbie shortly after the 2006 elections, which put Kibbie and his fellow Iowa Democrats in the state house trifecta as the sort of jumping off point. It's really good. I know I say this a lot on the podcast about all our stuff, but man, if you haven't yet, go find Todd's column. It is so good. It has so many interesting little especially if you're a follower of the Iowa legislature, so many interesting little historical nuggets in it. Just great stuff layered on more great stuff. The second you're done listening to this podcast, go read that column. Meantime, Todd, without now giving away too much of what's in there, so people still want to go read it, tell us a little bit about your memories of Kibbie and some of the things that came back to you as you remembered that interview.
Also, the column can be found in all of the finest bird feeders or bird cages, I think.
That's class. I said too many things about you. Yeah, you had to self-deprecate now to even it out. Well done.
Yeah, one of the reason, as you said, I talked to him is because the Democrats had taken the trifecta in 2006. The last time they had it was in 1965, and that happened to be the first year that Kibbie served in the legislature. And the 64 election was, Lyndon Johnson beat Barry Goldwater really, really bad. We just sometimes think that our politics is too strong, but LBJ supporters said, "In your guts, he's nuts," which was the variation of in your heart, he's right. So they also had the nuclear, the Daisy ad, if you're familiar with that.
No.
Yeah, when it's a little girl picking flower petals, and there's a rock, and there's like a countdown, and then there's a mushroom cloud.
I do remember that.
Yeah, it was regarded as a pretty effective ad.
Warning about, for people who aren't familiar, it was warning about like who should be in.
Yeah, Barry Goldwater might nuke China.
Start it right. Yep.
So Johnson won big, and Harold Hughes was running for his second term as governor. And if you don't know anything about him, he was a trucker and a recovering alcoholic who got elected governor. And one of the issues he took on was allowing liquor by the drink to be sold in the state, which it couldn't be until the mid-'60s. So Kibbie got elected. It was a huge Democratic landslide up and down the ballot. I think, a pretty sizable Republican majority in the House was completely flipped over to the Democrats, who won like 101 seats.
The numbers are just crazy.
Yeah, the sizes of the chamber were different then. I think there was 154 House members, and so anyway, but and the Senate flipped also. Well, sensing that this might not be a long period of total control, they really went to work. They had some political reforms, which used to be that lobbyists could sit on the floor with lawmakers, and they kicked them out of the chamber, off the floor. Committee meetings used to be held behind closed doors. They opened those up. They changed a lot of rules governing how the legislature operated to make it more open and easier for people to look at. They repealed the death penalty. There's so much, it's hard to even figure out.
That was the Civil Rights Act year too, wasn't it?
Yeah, Civil Rights Act was passed.
Man.
And there were 489 bills, I think, that passed and were signed into law, which is a lot. They worked until June 4th. That's when the session ended. Wow. And that's back when they only had session on the odd numbered years.
Every other. Right.
So you had 1 year to get stuff done before you faced election the next year. Yeah, they had constitutional amendments lowering the voting age, changing the way we pick judges, putting the the merit system in place. So yeah, they really changed the face of the state in in one legislative session. It was a lot of change, and in 65 or 66 voters are like, yeah, let's put the Republicans back in charge. This is a lot. So they did. Kibbie lost in 1966 and went back to the farm where he said he really didn't have any business in Des Moines anyway. We had a young family and a farm, and so he went back. And then he eventually, sadly, his first wife died, and he returned and ran for the Senate in 1988 and won his seat back, and then served until, I want to say, 2000.
Ooh.
It was like 20 years at least, or 30. But he was a character. He had kind of a gravelly, kind of that North Iowa farmer voice. And the one thing I'll always remember is whenever there was a gambling debate, he would raise his microphone and he'd be, I want to try to imitate him. It probably won't go very well, but you want to try gambling, you ought to raise cattle. Every time. I don't know if anyone took him up on that, but yeah.
2012, by the way, Todd.
2012. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Served in Korea, was a tank commander.
Mm-hmm.
So a life well lived.
And I, as you noted in the column, a Democrat farmer from a rural district. If you can wrap your head around what that kind of legislator looks like in this day and age.
Yeah. Well, Emmitsburg, was settled. A lot of that area was settled by Irish immigrants, and so they kind of stuck with the Democratic Party for a long time. And of course, that went by the wayside as it has every place else.
Yeah. Yeah. It's again, I appreciate that, Todd. It is such a great column. Everybody, I encourage strongly to check it out. Again, like I said, especially for anyone, but especially if you follow the legislature and the just kind of the historical stuff. And Todd listed some of the stuff from that unbelievable session. There's a lot of other stuff in there. It's worth checking out.
If you're a Democrat that needs just a short pause from the world, you were in charge a couple times, and
this was one of them.
This was one of them. May not happen in your lifetime, but it's the history lives.
Man, amazing stuff. All right, thanks, Todd. Another fascinating story to discuss. This one comes from our Sarah Watson, who wrote about the Scott County Republicans leadership election over last weekend. Man, there's so much going on in this one too. I literally have notes that I made so I didn't forget stuff, but I want to let Sarah tell the story first. And again, definitely find her story out there and check it out. Like every other paragraph, you go, what? Sarah, tell us all about it.
Yeah, so there was some infighting in the Scott County party here this month. They did leadership elections. There's 6 elected party positions in the Scott County Republicans organization. And the current chair, or excuse me, the person who's been the chair for the past 4 years ran. And then she was ousted by a farmer from rural Long Grove. His name is Chuck Brockman at the county election. So that was earlier this month on a really close vote. Like it took 4 ballots to achieve a majority. And Brockman ended up prevailing. There seems to be some, conflicting accounts of why Brockman ran. Brockman told me it was to make the county party more transparent, to hold more lighthearted events, and move a monthly meeting to a more accessible location. He also said that he believed that the current the person who's been the chair for the past 4 years was not going to run, which she denies. She said his deciding to run had nothing to do with her decision to run. Others who backed the previous chair believe that the new chair and a slate of other people that were elected to county party positions that he's working with want to get involved in primaries and try to oust Republicans this coming year, such as Marionette Miller Meeks. I asked Brockman about that. He said it was bull and that they would not be getting involved with primaries, and that the people who are spreading those rumors are working against the party. for some reason. So definitely some dramatic inter-party infighting. And one of the reasons I think this is interesting to statewide folks is Scott County is pretty key to statewide campaigns. It's, the third most populous area in Iowa. Scott's the largest of the Mississippi River counties that have shifted rightward in recent years. And in the past 4 years that the previous chair, Janita McNulty, has been the chair, they've really increased the number of registered Republican voters. So as of January, there are about 32,000 active registered Republicans and about 29,000 active registered Democrats. And in January 2021, there were 41,000 active registered Democrats to about 34,000 active registered Republicans. So there's kind of less overall, but now there's more registered Republicans in Scott County. And so some of the party members thought, well, why do we need a change? But so now there's a new party chair and they're moving forward. But it was just kind of an interesting, dramatic party struggle for leadership.
So fascinating. And Sarah, did I read this right? Tell me that Brockman, did you say, was that the name? Did I remember that right? The winner, and if I can back up, there was a committee that recommended candidates, and he wasn't one of those. He was nominated by someone on the floor instead. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, there was a nominating committee that interviewed, I think it was about 14 candidates. It was about a dozen candidates for the 6 leadership positions. And they picked McNulty and a couple and other people that they thought would do a good job. And the eventual winner, Chuck Brockman, was not on that list, and neither were any of the candidates he was running with. And so then him and his candidates were nominated from the floor, and they ended up prevailing in party in votes. So
fascinating. So fascinating. And obviously it'll be interesting now to kind of see how things go there within the Republican Party there in the next cycle or two with such a significant change in leadership. Fascinating stuff. Thanks, Sarah. Mm-hmm. All right. We're going to move on now to the campaign trail, although I could hear some folks trying to argue this was an official office event. But we here at the On Iowa Politics podcast are comfortable calling something for what it was. And this was a campaign event that brought Minnesota Governor Tim Walz to Iowa. The recently former running mate to Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris is no stranger to Iowa. Walz was sort of the regional surrogate that was sent to Iowa to help Democrats with nationally themed events in 2024. We even had him on Iowa Press, I remember, before he became Harris's running mate, obviously. Maya covered Walz's appearance in Iowa this time. Maya, why was Governor Walz here? Was it to make sure Iowa doesn't buy Minnesota land? Was it to argue over which state fair is superior? Or perhaps it was to announce he's running for president and to pledge he'll make Iowa Democrats first in the nation again. What was it, Maya?
Yeah, so before we get into it, 2 things. One, he did not mention Iowa trying to buy the southernmost Minnesotan counties, which I was very surprised. I feel like that would have been a really natural thing for him to bring up and, poke at, but alas. Second, in the state fair debate, I feel like that's...
get yourself in trouble, Maya.
I'll just say that's a very divisive issue. And
there you go. Well done.
People in either state have very strong feelings. So I feel like if he came and started bashing the Iowa State Fair, wouldn't have been good. I have my own personal strong feelings, but I cannot share those on the state fair as a reporter. I feel like I have to just remain neutral. Third, he did not announce that he's running for president, although you are kind of right that it did seem more like a campaign event than what it was branded as
and I don't even mean, I should clarify, and I don't even mean for himself personally, you know, that they're branding these as town hall, which is technically an official office event, but this was obviously a campaign thing to try and ding congressional Republicans. Go ahead, Maya.
Right. Yeah. Right. Like you said, dinging congressional Republicans, including Representative Zach Nunn, who represents the district that Walz came to in Des Moines. This is a trend that a lot of national and Democrats are hopping on around the country after a lot of Republican members of Congress have seen a lot of backlash at town halls from constituents and folks giving them feedback about how they're feeling about what's going on at the federal level with the Trump administration, frustrations over tech billionaire Elon Musk and his actions, and a lot of things that are going on at the federal government level right now. And so I feel like the Democrats are, including Walz, are hopping on that and kind of leveraging that right now. And so Walz kicked off his tour of a bunch of, I guess, swingier districts in the Midwest where Republicans won by smaller margins than in other congressional districts in the Midwest. So, for example, Nunn only won by a few points in the last election, and the day after he went to Nebraska, the 2nd congressional district, which is also extremely swingy, which is represented by Don Bacon, who also hasn't been holding in-person town halls, and he won by like less than 2 points in the November election. So they're just trying to highlight that these representatives in particular haven't been holding town halls, and they want to shine a light on that. And they said they want to give folks a voice in the state to air their concerns about what's going on. This town hall, it was about an hour. It had 5 speakers, and it seemed like they were prearranged, lined up. And they all talked about different areas, I think probably so that Walz could hit on these different areas when he was speaking. There was a registered nurse at the Iowa City Veterans Affairs Medical Center, and he expressed concerns about the Department of Veteran Affairs layoffs. There was also a teacher that expressed concern about what's going on. Or I guess last week, there wasn't as much news about this, but now, of course, with the executive order on the Department of Education, what's going to go on with funding for her students with disabilities. There was a mom talking about concerns with Medicaid because seeking medical care for her child. So just, things like that. But he did bring his, as many people saw during the presidential election, his folksy charm. He said damn a lot. He, I called out Musk for being I think it was a South African Nepo baby, just kind of his more outward verbiage. So it was interesting though. Yeah.
Well, bull in the damn, we're going to get an explicit label on the podcast here with, I think one more. Thanks, Maya. And to kind of close a loop here, I mentioned at the top that Tom is off this week for the podcast because he's doing some other work right now. We're taping Friday morning. Speaking of town halls, he is covering literally as we speak. Maybe it's wrapped up by now. The town hall that Senator Chuck Grassley was holding in Dysart. Do I remember that right? Does that sound right, gang?
In Franklin County is where
Franklin
it's at.
Franklin County. And Tom's already been tweeting out from that event. Looks like it's he's going to have plenty to talk about next week. We'll see how that one has gone. But yeah, and we're seeing a lot of events like the ones Maya is describing, not necessarily with Governor Walz, but advocacy groups are putting them on as well. Todd, I wanted to ask you really quick. I'm curious your perspective on what we're seeing, kind of broadly speaking here.
Oh, right now. Iowa has the best state fair. Oh, is that not what you're asking? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
And by the way, I should thank you for that because I didn't include the detail as I was trying to help Maya keep herself out of trouble. For those of you who don't know, Maya has some Minnesota lived experience in her background. So her opinion on that question, I think we here on the podcast will keep on background for now to keep her safe. No, but Todd, do you sense any similarity to what we're seeing and experiencing right now at these town halls and generally speaking with the voters and attitudes toward the current administration? Do you see any similarities to the Tea Party movement? And I don't mean in terms of policy or ideology, obviously, just in terms of voter anger levels. And obviously there's a lot of people, I'm not discounting, there's a lot of people who are still full-throatedly supporting President Trump, Elon et al. But obviously there's also a lot of people that very much are not happy with what's going on. I'm curious if you're feeling any historical rhyming there.
Well, there is. I mean, Barack Obama wasn't president for very long before the Tea Party came to be. And, they were upset about his universal health care ideas and, lots of different things that he wanted to do. Some of it was grassroots, but some of it was also well-funded by, the Koch brothers and some of those groups. So Democrats sort of derisively called it AstroTurf instead of grassroots. It was a lot. I mean, it was like that in a lot of ways. I mean, Democrats were going to town hall meetings and they were catching hell and, had to flee at times when things got a little too hot and they had police show up and, stuff like that. I think the main difference this time is that I think people are a little more agitated and desperate to have their thoughts known to their congressmen and others because they see what's happening as being sort of unprecedented. And it's not, they don't have to make anything up. With Obamacare, you could say, Granny's, what was
Bush Granny wants the cliff.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You're going to, decide whether grandma's going to die. The federal government's going to do that. But this is, everybody who sees this, well, a lot of people who see this are, worried and they do want answers. And I don't know that this is the best way to get them. There's, this sort of shouting matches and stuff don't, I mean, they make news, but they're not very enlightening. Right. But I don't, I can't blame people. It's just, this is a really fraught moment, and it doesn't surprise me that people are getting out there and that they're angry.
Yeah.
Well, and Tom
sorry, go ahead, Jared.
I was looking at his thread, and Tom was saying they were having to turn people away at the door because of how many people were there. And, Franklin County is like a 70-30 Republican Democrat county. So
yeah, well, it'll be interesting too. I'm sure not everybody there is from Franklin County because this is the first such event that Senator Grassley has held since the election. So yeah,
but like Des Moines, like an hour and a half away, so you'd have to be pretty animated to go.
Yep,
if
absolutely.
you were like an outside agitator,
right, absolutely.
But luckily, Dysart has a convention complex where they can have this event. No, they don't. It's a really tiny little town.
Yeah.
You said 70-30 Republican. I think it's like 90-10 corn and soybeans. So yeah, this is, Democrats always accuse Republicans of picking places like this. But yeah, people have cars and they can drive and the weather's nice. So why not take a road trip to yell at Chuck Grassley
and see the beautiful Franklin County Courthouse.
Oh yes, in Hampton. Yes, very nice.
Jared, I want to go back to Walz real quick. I am so weak. I can't fight it. I have to ask this kind of question. Shame on me, but here goes. Should we take Walz at his word that he was just in Iowa and, as Maya mentioned, a few other states to to help bring attention to these congressional Republicans' lack of town halls? Or maybe did we also see the seeds of a potential future presidential run here from the governor?
It would be a little bit of an unorthodox soft launch for a presidential candidate like Walz, who's kind of just gone on this tour of really being a sin eater for the Democratic Party and just like taking blame for everything that went wrong for Democrats in November. Usually that's not how you kick off like a campaign. But
that's a good point.
Regardless of the intent, it is savvy because there's very clearly like a vacuum for national Democrats in terms of any clear leadership. You saw that with how agitated people were with Chuck Schumer over the past week. Mm-hmm. And, I don't necessarily think whoever gets in the earliest with a 2028 bid is going to be the odds-on favorite. It is smart to be like flirting with a bid because it gets attention for whoever's doing that. And it maybe even kind of does some degree of, focusing for the Democrats. And it gives them something to kind of coalesce around maybe.
Yeah.
My answer to that question is always, he's running. Whoever it is, whoever comes here, they're running.
You and Dave Weigel.
Yeah.
I will say another case of history repeating itself, not just with Republicans now saying that Democrats are astroturfing these events. Another one, as it relates to these town halls, is having these like empty chairs for the Republicans. Very much an echo of Clint Eastwood at the 2012 GOP convention. So history repeating itself.
Well, yeah. There's an empty chair, and then they could have a second chair for all the good ideas they have on, to have these events, because empty chair debates are really, and town halls are just, I don't think it's ever made any difference to anybody, but yeah, well, it's good for the chair industry. I don't know.
Hold on. Are we just uncovering a conspiracy? Is big chair behind all of this?
Most companies do sell empty chairs. I mean, you never get one full.
That's true. Very rarely, anyways. Oh, man. All right, what a perfect spot to leave. That's going to do it for this episode of On Iowa Politics. But do come back next week and get Tom's report from Senator Grassley's town hall this morning. I'm sure that's going to be fascinating. If you're not already, please subscribe to us on your streaming service of choice or on YouTube, where you should also smash that like button. And you can also find the podcast each and every week on your preferred Gazette or Lee newspaper website, where you can feed the click monster. Now that you listen to the On Iowa Politics podcast, make sure you're also subscribed to the On Iowa Politics newsletter, where every morning in your inbox, you'll receive all the latest politics and government coverage from our team. You can subscribe to that free newsletter at the Gazette's website, thegazette.com. Lastly, don't forget that the work of everyone you heard here today can be found on the pages and websites of the Quad City Times, Muscatine Journal, Cedar Rapids Gazette, Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier, Mason City Globe Gazette, Council Bluffs Daily Nonpareil, and the Sioux City Journal. For Maya Marchel, Hoff, Sarah Watson, Jared McNett, Todd Dorman, and our producer Bailey Chehan, I'm Erin Murphy. Be well, everyone, and be good.